David had spent years chasing the unknown. A seasoned urban explorer, he had seen everything: abandoned hospitals, forgotten asylums, and ghost towns swallowed by time. But when he came across an old newspaper article about Black Hollow, a town that supposedly vanished overnight, he knew he had to see it for himself. The article mentioned that Black Hollow had once been a thriving mining town until one night in 1953, when every resident vanished without a trace. The surrounding towns claimed that the place never existed, that it was a fabrication, but David found maps real, tangible proof that it had been there. And so, with a backpack full of supplies and his camera, he set off to find it. The road leading to Black Hollow was cracked and overgrown, winding through dense forests. His GPS gave up hours ago, and the deeper he went, the quieter everything became. No birds, no wind, just an eerie silence that made his skin crawl. When he finally saw the town ahead, his breath caught. The buildings stood perfectly intact, untouched by time. Storefronts with sun-faded signs, homes with furniture still in place, as if their owners had just stepped out for a moment. But there were no cars, no power lines, no signs of modern life. David pulled out his camera and began filming. "All right, guys," he whispered, despite himself, "this is Black Hollow, the town that shouldn't exist." As he moved through the empty streets, a strange feeling settled in his chest. The air was thick, almost oppressive. He reached the town square, where a massive clock tower loomed overhead. The clock face was cracked, the hands frozen at 3:13 a.m. A sharp clattering sound made him spin around. One of the shop doors, slightly ajar, swayed in the windless air. "Hello?" His voice barely broke the silence. He knew better than to expect an answer. He stepped inside what had once been a diner. Plates with half-eaten meals still sat on tables, covered in dust. The counter had a cash register, its drawer hanging open, a single dollar bill still inside. Then the jukebox in the corner flickered to life. A warped, static-filled version of an old 50s tune crackled through the speakers. David's pulse thundered. His hands shook as he lifted the camera, recording every detail. This shouldn't be possible. And then the whispers started. Soft, barely audible, but unmistakably human voices. They came from nowhere and everywhere, growing louder, overlapping, until the air itself buzzed with them. He stumbled back out onto the street, gasping for air. The town had changed. The buildings looked new, freshly painted, and lanterns glowed from porches. The air smelled of rain and burning firewood, and the streets, they weren't empty anymore. Figures moved in the distance, silhouettes of people, their faces obscured, walking as if they had never left, as if they had been there all along. A deep chill ran through David's body. He wasn't supposed to be here. He had stepped into the past. Then the clock tower gonged. The figures stopped. Every single shadowed head turned toward him in unison. Panic overtook reason. David turned and ran. He didn't care where, as long as it was away from them. His boots pounded against the pavement, his breath ragged. He didn't dare look back. The town was changing again. Buildings melted away into decay. The light from lanterns flickered and died. The voices screamed now, desperate and furious. He reached his car, practically throwing himself inside. The engine roared to life, and he floored it, speeding back toward the main road. Only when he was miles away did he finally glance in the rearview mirror. Black Hollow was gone. Not just behind him, gone from existence. No roads, no ruins. Just endless forest, as if the town had never been there at all. David never spoke about Black Hollow again. His footage, corrupted beyond recovery. But some nights when the world is too quiet, he swears he still hears the faint echo of that warped jukebox playing from somewhere, just beyond the trees. Jake had never heard of Raven Creek before he saw its name on a torn, water-damaged map at an old roadside gas station. The attendant, a frail old man with hollow eyes, saw him looking at it and shook his head. "You don't want to go there," the man warned. Jake smirked. "Why not?" "Because no one ever comes back the same." Of course, that only made Jake more determined. His job as a documentary filmmaker meant he thrived on stories like these. Abandoned places, strange disappearances, if there was even a hint of truth behind it, he wanted to uncover it. So he set out early the next morning, following the barely visible road leading to Raven Creek. The road narrowed, trees closing in on either side. His phone lost signal. The deeper he drove, the more wrong everything felt. The sky darkened prematurely, the air turned thick and heavy, and the forest seemed unnervingly still. And then he saw it. Raven Creek wasn't in ruins like he expected. The houses were old but intact. The street lamps still worked, casting a dim orange glow over the cracked pavement. He parked near what looked like a town square, stepping out cautiously. A newspaper lay on a bench, yellowed with time. He picked it up, dated 1926. As he filmed, something fell off. He walked through the town, calling out, "Hello? Anyone here?" Silence. Then a door creaked open. Jake spun around. A house with its porch light flickering stood ahead. The door now stood slightly ajar. He hesitated but stepped inside. The air smelled of something rotten. Furniture was in place, dishes stacked neatly in cabinets, but dust covered everything like a tomb. Then he saw the hallway lined with framed photographs. Jake frowned. The faces in the photos were blurred, like the film had been smudged, but one thing was clear: he was in one of them. Heart pounding, he turned to leave, but the front door was gone. No, not gone. The house had changed. The furniture was different now, newer, untouched. The dust was gone. The walls no longer cracked. A shadow moved at the end of the hall. Jake's breath hitched. A tall, thin figure stood there, motionless, its face a pale, smooth void. A faceless man? The light flickered. The whispers began. He turned and ran, crashing through a side door, bursting into the street. But the town was no longer empty. They were watching him now. Figures stood in doorways, staring. The lamps flickered erratically. The air was filled with a deep, resonant humming, like a sound from beneath the earth. Jake sprinted to his car, yanking the door open, throwing himself inside. The engine sputtered, refusing to start. From the rearview mirror, he saw something. A figure sitting in his back seat. A cold breath touched his neck. "You were always meant to come back." The world vanished into darkness. Days later, his car was found near the highway. Jake wasn't. But a new photo appeared in that hallway in Raven Creek. A clear image of Jake, standing among the faceless, his own features missing.